following opinions are solely those of BoatTEST.com and its test captain.
Hi, I'm Steve for BoatTEST.com, and today we're having a look at the 140 horsepower TEC G2, a new outboard just introduced by Evinrude. This 1.9 liter engine is a two-stroke with 3 cylinders and has direct in-the-cylinder fuel injection. Because it's built with an all-new 2-stroke 3-cylinder powerhead, the 140 weighs in at just 390 pounds. This opens up all sorts of possibilities for owners of bass boats, aluminum multi-species boats, bay and flats boats, small dual consoles, center consoles, pontoon boats, tow sports boats, small bow riders, inflatables, and entry-level boats of all kinds. Let's see how the TEC G2 100 performs on a test of the Tidewater 198 Adventure center console. The boat has a length overall of 19 feet 8 inches and a beam of 8 feet 4 inches. With an empty weight of 1,950 pounds, 52.5 gallons of fuel and 2 people on board, we had an estimated test weight of 3,100 pounds. With the Evinrude TEC G2 140 outboard powering our test boat and turning a 14.5 by 19 RX3 stainless steel prop, we reached a top speed of 41.8 miles per hour at 5,500 RPM. Best economic cruise came in at 3,500 RPM and 24.3 miles per hour. It was at that speed that the 4.2 gallon per hour fuel burn translated into 5.8 miles per gallon and a range of 291 statute miles. Where the new Evinrude 140 really shines on the Tidewater 198 is at trolling speeds from 4 to 6.5 miles per hour, running at 1,000 to 1,500 RPM. We recorded a fuel efficiency of 13 miles per gallon at 1,000 RPM and 4.6 miles per hour, and 7.5 miles per gallon at 1,500 and going 6.4 miles per hour. When we compared these trolling fuel consumption numbers with the only other 140 horsepower engine on the market and its performance in a half dozen similar boats, we found that the new Evinrude 140 was 73% more fuel efficient at 1,000 RPM and 25% more fuel efficient at both 1,500 RPM and best cruise. The reason is that when it comes to trolling speeds, no 4-stroke engine can lay a hand on Evinrude's new G2 2-stroke in terms of fuel efficiency. The reason for that is at low RPM settings, Evinrude's direct injection to the top of the cylinder just sprays in a few bubbles of fuel, which is all it's needed. 4-stroke engines can't do this, so their fuel consumption at trolling speeds is high. More on this later. For acceleration, the Tidewater 198 got on plane in an average time of 4.2 seconds and went from 0 to 20 in an average of 5.1 seconds and on to 30 in 8.7 seconds. These are the kind of whole shot times that we might expect to see with a 6 or 8 cylinder engine. But remember that the Evinrude 140 engine has just 3 cylinders and performs just as well in acceleration as much larger 4-stroke engines. The reason is because Evinrude is a 2-stroke engine and every stroke is a power stroke. Center console is often placed the driver quite close to the engine, but the old saw about 2-stroke engines being louder than 4-stroke engines does not hold with the Evinrude 140. We found it to be about the same or even quieter in terms of decibels during our testing than comparable engines in class. The quiet operation is due to the way the exhaust is managed. First, the idle exhaust relief faces aft. An internal muffler box on the port side vents aft and quiets the engine at idle speeds. Above idle, the engine exhausts at the propeller hub. At the heart of the new 140 is the Evinrude's direct injection fuel system. It's unlike any other 4-stroke engine in class for 2 reasons. First, the injector is actually in the cylinder head, not in the intake manifold like it is in 4-stroke engines. Because of that position and the injector's design, it's actually a high-pressure fuel pump capable of putting out 800 psi as well as being an injector. At low RPM, only a small amount of fuel, like champagne bubbles according to Evinrude, is injected into the smaller top section of the cylinder. That's called stratified combustion, and it uses less fuel for more efficiency and cleaner operation. At high RPM, the engine switches to what's known as homogeneous combustion, and more fuel is injected to the whole cylinder using the full bore and stroke to produce excellent mid and high RPM range torque and power. The result is an engine that Evinrude says is twice as efficient under 1,000 RPM and from 15 to 50% more efficient up to wide open throttle. There are other important features to this new Evinrude engine. One is the onboard oil reservoir, which holds 1.9 gallons. Once the reservoir is filled, that oil supply will last for 50 to 60 hours of engine runtime. a whole season for most boaters, and usually it's even longer for low RPM pontoon boats, which spend about 60% of their time under 1,000 RPM. Oil is not mixed with the fuel. Instead, lubrication is its own completely separate system, sending a carefully metered amount of oil through clear tubes to bathe the cylinder walls with clear oil as needed. Four-stroke engines are lubricated with recirculated oil, which becomes increasingly contaminated as time goes on and must be changed every 50 to 100 hours. The Evinrude engine never needs oil changes, and its oil is always clean, reducing the chance for cylinder wear. The new Evinrude E-TEC G2 140 needs no break-in period. Four-stroke engines permit only limited revs for the first 10 to 20 hours. This is because Evinrude's EMM simply doubles the oil to the cylinders for the first 2.5 hours of operation. Of course, a tiny amount of oil is burned in the combustion, and because it's added to the exhaust, it's included in the emissions of the outboard. On four-stroke outboards, boaters and dealers have to dispose of dirty crankcase oil. The result is that the Evinrude outboards, already the lowest emissions outboard available, are even cleaner than the competition. Under the removable top cowling is the yellow oil fill cap. Also accessible are rigging connections for the fuel line and external oil tank, the forward freshwater flush line, the Evinrude private network connections controlling throttle and shift, and the NEMA 2000 connection to the boat systems to integrate with helm units from Simrad, Lowrance, and Garmin. Yet another feature of the Evinrude oiling system is automatic winterization. The engine can be ready for off-season storage with a tap of the Evinrude iTouch display or the BRP E-Link smartphone app, which has all of the engine diagnostic data that the iTouch display screen or the Nautilus 3 display does. With this free app, owners don't even need an onboard touch screen. Because of Evinrude's self-fogging system, owners can winterize their own engines without the cost or hassle of taking the engine back to the dealer. Also, if there's a nice day in the middle of the winter, Evinrude owners can relaunch for a day of fishing or boating, then re-winterize at the end of the day at no cost or wasted time. On the top of the engine, under this black cover, is the magneto, which is lined with magnets that spins around these copper coils to generate electricity, instead of using an alternator like all four-strokes. A magneto has fewer parts, and there are no pulleys, belts, or brushes to wear out or break, such as with an alternator. The magneto produces 30 amps at wide open throttle, and for the boat systems, 14 amps at idle on up to 22 amps at wide open throttle. Water in the lower unit gear case oil, shown draining here, is a major cause of gear case failure. This happens for two reasons. Either the oil level is low in the lower unit, allowing condensation to contaminate the oil, or a seal is compromised, allowing raw water in. This is sometimes due to fishing line wrapped around the propeller, which weakens the seal and can let water in when the oil gets hot and expands, pushing out the damaged seal. Evinrude has solved both of these issues with an expansion tank for gear oil, which means the gear case is always topped up with lube oil, and when it heats up, the hot oil has a place to go instead of blowing out the seal. Evinrude uses an Ultra HPF gear fluid, which can continue to lubricate even if it's contaminated by up to 25% of its volume with water. The outboard runs on 87 octane fuel and also has an internal fuel filter that functions as a water separator. A water detector notifies the owner if the fuel is contaminated. The lower unit's been redesigned and is just 4.9 inches wide and has larger pickups moved lower and farther forward to allow the boat to run with engine positions higher, something shallow water anglers will like. The straight leading edge is designed to shed weeds. Anodes are placed prominently throughout, and the anti-ventilation plate has been shortened and positioned farther aft to permit better water flow around the prop and still prop ventilation in rough conditions. Evinrude tells us that in normal conditions, this allows the boat to stay on plane at lower speeds. We mentioned Evinrude's driver-centric approach, which means Evinrude's engineers have loaded this relatively small engine with most of the features of the company's larger six-cylinder engines. For example, dynamic power steering is available on all Evinrude models ranging from 300 horsepower down to the 115 HO. The power steering pump is integrated into the mounting bracket. This is a major advancement in outboard engine design and an industry first. It makes installation and repower much easier and less costly. And although it's an option, it's far less costly than power steering on a four-stroke engine. The outboard has a through-tube tilt tube for use with anti-feedback cable steering. It can also be used with bolt-on external hydraulic steering. On the boats we tested, the system gave 100% feel for the boat, and each turn of the wheel caused the boat to react immediately. Helical worm gears make for integrated power steering that give excellent response. Evinrude's dynamic steering lets the owner set the feel of the steering as the boat moves from low to high speed through the helm dash control or the icon touch display. A dual-axis rigging tube is fixed to the mounting bracket so it stays put while allowing the engine to rotate independently, providing for a cleaner transom and less wear on the components that connect the engine to the boat. This pin can be inserted to immobilize the steering to keep the outboard from flopping to one side or the other when it's raised for trailering. The new E-TEC G2 outboards tilt 81 degrees, 10 degrees more than most other outboards in class, to get the entire lower unit completely out of the water, key for longevity in the marine environment. Evinrude included the iTrim automatic trim system in these outboards as standard, helping the boat perform the way it should even with a novice at the wheel. To quell vibration on this 3-cylinder engine, Evinrude started by putting counterbalancing weights on both ends of the crankshaft. Here we see the counterbalancing weights at each end of the crankshaft that take most of the vibration out before it gets to the engine mounts. Evinrude's focused motor mount system isolates the power head from the mounting bracket with 2 heavy-duty rubber bushings at the top of the bracket to reduce the vibration transmitted. Below, there are 2 independent bushings that connect the midsection of the engine body with the bracket. The engine body is isolated from the mounting bracket by hard rubber that connects the leg of the engine to the mounting bracket, transmitting very little onto the transom of the boat. One other feature that's been added to the bottom of the E-TEC G2 line, the engines are now available with a white exoskeleton to color match more boats out there. All that quick acceleration and top-end performance doesn't mean anything if the engine doesn't hold up to the marine environment. This all-new engine is ready for both fresh and salt water. The blocks are cast from high-grade aluminum alloy and covered in black epoxy for protection, and only stainless steel fasteners are used throughout for added corrosion protection. Most important, titanium oxide is electrostatically coated, shown here with a dull gray finish, on all aluminum parts that come in contact with raw water. This process is extremely expensive and only Evinrude uses it. This chart shows the relative anti-corrosion properties of titanium at 0 relative to stainless steel and aluminum alloy. All other lower units are simply painted aluminum. Some of the largest anodes we've seen in class are installed on the lower unit for protection in marinas with galvanic corrosion. Evinrude stands by the outboards with a 5-year corrosion warranty that's at least a year longer and more inclusive than any other outboard warranty. And we've checked them all. Just take a look. Going hand in hand with this 5-year anti-corrosion warranty is a 5-year limited warranty on all parts and labor. In addition, there's no scheduled dealer maintenance for 5 years or 500 hours, whichever comes first. So that's our inspection and review of the all-new Evinrude E-TEC G2 140, one of the latest additions to this series of technologically advanced direct-injected 2-stroke outboards. Keep an eye out for tests of boats powered with this engine and reviews of our 3-cylinder stablemates. For BoatTEST.com, I'm Captain Steve. We'll see you on the water.